You all set, Jasmine?
Yes.
Is everybody let in?
There's a few still loading. Give them just a moment. Okay, now everybody's on.
All right, so being March 3rd at 6:30, I'll open, and having quorum, I'll open the planning board meeting for this evening. I can't believe I'm reading this. It has a March 12th, 2020 date. So almost a year ago, we went remote, it looks like. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain criteria and provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, the meeting of the Bridgewater Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time. This meeting is being recorded, and within 48 hours, we will post the link of the recording on the town's website and/or the town's social media page. The following members of the Bridgewater Planning Board are participating remotely this evening. Patrick Driscoll, it's myself, the chair, Mr. Raymond Ajemian, the vice chair, Mrs. Jean Garino, the clerk, Mr. Michael McDonald, and Mr. Stephen Geller. During the meeting, all votes of the board will be taken through roll call votes. The following Bridgewater town staff will also be participating remotely. Ms. Jennifer Burke, the Community Economic Development Director. Mrs. Jasmine Farinacci, the Assistant Town Planner. And Mrs. Leslie Dorr, the Office Administrator. At this time, everyone's mic is muted. The board's mics will be unmuted through the whole meeting. And as items appear on the agenda, the project's representatives' mics will be unmuted. If it is a project that requires a public hearing and allows for public comment, we ask that you use the chat feature to ask your question to the host and list your name and address with your question. The chair will recognize the questions in order. You can also use the raise my hand feature in the participant menu, and you'll be unmuted when the chair recognizes you. Again, please state your name and address before stating your question. If you're on the phone, you may dial *9 to raise your hand. So the first public hearing we have this evening is for 60 to 88 Broad Street, West Point Realty Development. This is a continuation from a prior public hearing, and the agenda just went away.
Sorry, that was my fault.
That's all right. So
There you go.
So we did have this continued to this evening, but we did receive a continuation request from the applicant. Do we have that available?
Yep, give me 1 second. I should have been more organized. I apologize. I think this is it. Nope, that's not it. Oh, here it is. Request to continue.
So we received an email on
Right, can you see that?
Yep. We received an email on Thursday, February 25th, 2021 from
Troy Clarkson.
Basically stating they were still working on the plans. And we would ask the planning board continue until their next meeting, which is March 17th.
March 17th. Yes. We already have one public hearing that's been advertised for 6:30. So I would suggest that maybe the board would continue this to 7 p.m. so that people aren't waiting around.
What do we have at 6:30, Ms. Burke?
It's a major modification to Oldfield 2. Long Built Homes is requesting a modification to some drainage work on their subdivision.
Okay. So is there any discussion on this from the board? Would we like to make a motion to continue it to March 17th at 7 p.m.?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. McDonald, the second by Mr. Ajemian. Any discussion? Okay, so it's a roll call vote. Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
Yes.
Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, so that takes care of that. And just, I know we talked a little bit about this, Ms. Burke, but there's no time to act that we have to worry about. Should we ask the applicant for anything, or is this email sufficient?
That email is sufficient. I've spoken with the town attorney. That email is sufficient.
Okay, so for everybody that's on, we just continued the Broad Street public hearing to March 17th at 7 PM. All right, so under board business, could you bring the agenda
Yeah,
back
I'm gonna
up?
go back. Yeah, I'm gonna get it. Give me 1 second. I was just rearranging what I was, so I was more able to do this without issue.
They don't have a representative tonight, Jennifer, right?
Oldfield, yes, they do. Paula's
They do?
here.
Paul? Oh, I see it on the bottom.
Paula.
Sorry. Okay. Paula, okay.
This may be her phone too.
No, I just, hold on a second. Can you guys still see me?
Yes.
Do you want me to bring up the plan, Pat?
That'd be great. I lost Zoom altogether. I gotta find it, so I can't see anything.
There's the application and there's the plan.
She might be calling in. There's
She's
a phone
on.
number. There we go.
Oh, we can hear you, Paula. I think.
We could.
Yeah, I just saw her.
All right, so while we're waiting for Miss Latola, there was an application submitted with this.
Yep, it was just this application. It's not anything.
What's the request for again? It's for
So the request is to bring the shade tree plantings into compliance or into alignment with the current board regulations, which is 40 feet on center. When this subdivision was originally approved, I believe it was at 30 feet on center, which would have been 112 total trees. So bringing it down to 40 feet on center reduces the amount of trees to 90 total trees in the subdivision. That we're talking about shade trees, which are these green dots along the road. There's 16 lots in the subdivision. I believe from a planning perspective, it is a minor modification. I've spoken with the town engineer. He also agrees that it's a minor modification.
And from when we redid the tree planting schedule, we asked for multiple varieties. We provided a list and we actually asked for a bigger tree than we previously requested, correct?
Yeah, so they're proposing, if you see the note in there, it is compliant with our existing regulations, which is 2 inches in caliper and measured at a height of 42 inches from the ground and at least 12 feet in height.
Okay. Are we still waiting for Miss Latola or is she on now?
We have to unmute on your phone, which I believe is *9 or *6. There you go.
Okay, I'm not an expert at this, so,
We can hear you now.
okay, what would you like to know?
Pat?
Are there any board questions? So Miss Latola, we have the application before us for the minor modification to change the tree planting schedule to comply with our current one. And there were some details provided. Are there any board questions for Miss Latola?
I think, first of all, we should procedurally determine if it's a major or minor before we even get into discussion on the facts of it. But I'd say it's a minor. I'd make a motion to accept it as a minor modification, I believe is the right term.
Good call, Michael. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't think about handling it that way, so thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion to consider this a minor modification by Mr. McDonald, second by Mr. Jemian. Any discussion? So I'll start with Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. Do we need any more clarification on this application from the applicant, or are we comfortable taking a vote on the application?
Looks pretty straightforward to me.
Comfortable going forward with it.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the minor modification?
I'll make that motion to approve wait a minute, to approve the minor modification, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Jemian, second by Mr. McDonald. Any discussion? Any board comments? So we'll start with Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
yes,
and I'm a yes. So, all right, thank you, Mrs. Latola, Ms. Latola.
Thank you.
Now, this was just board business. I shouldn't have asked for public comment, should I have? No.
It's not a public hearing, it's a public meeting, so there is no public comment.
I didn't know how it was advertised. All right. So the next item we have on the agenda is, so apparently a year ago when we approved Theory Wellness on Elm Street, we asked them to check in regards to odor and to determine if there are any,
Their decision.
if there are any complaints.
Yep, so if you look at condition number 14, the special permit will be up for review within 1 year from the date of the town clerk issues a certificate of no appeal or the date all judicial appeals have been concluded. At such time, the applicant must appear before the planning board and review all odor complaints to the building department. The planning board must determine the action or inaction to take based on the complaints. If action must be taken, the applicant must contract an independent licensed professional engineer and or firm with a licensed professional engineer or to test odor control mechanisms and offer a new odor control plan for review and approval of the planning board. So as of last Thursday, we spoke with both the Board of Health and the building department, neither of which have received any complaints within the last year regarding odor from Theory Wellness. This is from the Board of Health. They've received 0 complaints. And this is from the building department, and they've not received any complaints about odor at Theory Wellness.
So what are you asking us to do? Is this just to extend the special permit or just to? Like,
No,
what's-
I don't believe so. The condition was just that after a year, they have to check in, and if there, I would believe that after a year, if there was no complaints, that there was no additional anything needed to be done, but I guess that would be up to the board. The owner is here, Brandon is here, if anybody wants to speak with him.
Well, I guess my question is,
But-
are you just informing us or do we need to take a vote?
Well, you were the ones that asked for a review within 1 year, so this is your review, and there are no
and if there's no.
Right, so my
complaints, so.
guess if there were no complaints, then they fall within what we approved, and if there was complaints, they would have to hire a professional
Correct,
engineer to do some odor testing.
right.
So,
So I guess I would argue that maybe a letter is appropriate back to the owner of the special permit saying that they've complied with the 1 year review and that they've met all the conditions of the special permit. Just so that they're covered.
Or should we take a vote saying that the board found that item 14 was met?
Yeah, that's fine.
So we do have, if we do have the applicant on the phone or on Zoom, would any board members like to ask questions or make comments or anything to the applicant or with the applicant?
There haven't been any complaints. I don't think we have anything.
Yes, my only comment would be, the facilities. I totally believe the applicants did an outstanding job with construction and running of their facility. The only thing I would maybe mention is, it is a new facility. So I do wonder if going forward, maybe a bi-yearly review to make sure everything's still working as intended as the facility ages might not be the worst thing to put forward to the board. if we have that authority to do so. I'm not sure on the,
When you say bi-yearly, you're saying every 2 years?
yeah. I don't think it's going to be a big deal going forwards. I assume they're going to continue with the same quality control, but it can't hurt also to give the board a little authority to make sure everything's running as it should, given the nature of the project.
Well, if I may, I think that makes sense, but at the same time, we're not an enforcement board. I'm not sure whether we have the right to do that.
There's no open permit before you. I'm not sure that you can add conditions to a permit that's already been approved and an appeal period's already passed.
I think it would be up to the code official to enforce that if they start getting complaints, that he would have to go
Yeah.
back and do it. And hopefully the applicant who is listening to this, would, know how we feel and comply with that, should they get any complaints.
My only counterpoint there would be that did that condition not have any teeth in the first place then?
Well,
Well,
Well, the-
that
the
condition would
well,
have
the
teeth
condition that
because
we
it
put-
would,
the condition that we built in is for the first year. So
correct.
that's where it has teeth. If we had complaints, we could then make them hire a licensed professional and do odor testing, submit it back to the board with their professional recommendation.
Right.
But as far as I believe Ray's right. I don't think we're not that big of a governing authority to make this applicant come back every 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I don't anticipate any problems anyways. So I'm not, particularly riled up about it, but
All right, so do we have a motion one way or another about item 14?
I think I'll set forth a motion to, approve the applicant has met all the conditions and a letter be sent that they complied with condition number 14 after the first year. That's really it. That's all it can be.
So before we get a second, I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Geller, but does the applicant want to say anything? We should have asked just to clarify.
I'll just say real quick, this is Brandon Pollock, CEO of Theory Wellness, 1050 Elm Street in Bridgewater. Appreciate the board's thoroughness. We've had no complaints addressed to us directly as well. And as part of the odor mitigation plan that was presented to the board, we do have routine maintenance on all of our filters, our carbon scrubbing filters, and that has already been taking place. So we'll make sure we continue to do that in the future, and we will certainly work in good faith to address any complaints if they do come up.
Oh, great. So if there's no other questions for Mr. Pollock, do we have a second on Mr. Geller's motion?
I'll second this motion.
So we have a motion by Mr. Geller, second by Mr. McDonald. Any board discussion?
What's the motion again, please?
The motion is to send a letter to the applicant stating that they complied with a special permit number 14 that they came back to us. They had no complaints, so they conformed to what we requested them to do.
Yeah. Do we need to use the word comply? Because they didn't do anything. We just.
Well, they kind of did, because we asked them to come back in a year and they complied with it.
That's true. All right, no big deal.
So Mr. McDonald, are you still okay with that second?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Any other discussion? Sorry, I made a mess of that. I just forgot to let Mr.
That's
Pollock talk, so. And I wanted to give him the opportunity before we voted on it, so. If there's no other discussion from the board, I'll start with Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Guarino,
Yes,
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so great. And I see a number of people have signed on since we started the meeting. So we'll just reiterate that Broad Street that was supposed to be on tonight has been continued to March 17th at 7 PM, if that's what you're here for. Could you expand to blow up the agenda, Ms. Burke? My eyes are terrible. Could you blow that up some more? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I didn't print it off tonight because we don't have much on, so.
Can you see
All
it
right.
now?
Yep. So the minutes we're gonna postpone, correct?
Yeah,
That's correct.
We have board and committee reports. So then, other than welcoming Mrs. Farinacci as our new assistant town planner, do we have anything else, Ms. Burke?
I don't have anything else at this time.
CPC is going to be having a hearing on March 24th. Open hearing. So,
March
Public hearing.
24th?
yeah, March 24th.
Okay. Any other committee comments? Mrs. Farinacci, do you have a report for us?
Do not have a report for you this evening, other than I am very excited to be working with you all.
That's your first night.
We'll see if you say the same thing 6 months from now.
I will ask Jennifer. I'll look exactly like this and I'll say the same thing 6 months from now, I promise.
Buckle up, right?
I'm ready.
He's dealt with us in the parking lot.
I've had the pleasure of meeting you in the parking lot.
All right, so if we have nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Who said that? I'm sorry. Mr. Geller? Or
No.
Mr. McDonald? No? Oh,
Ray did.
Right.
all
I'll
right.
say-
So motion by Mr. Jemian, second by Mrs. Garino. Any discussion? Mr. Geller?
Yes.
Mr. Jemian?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Garino?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.